Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining. I am gonna share my screen now. Okay, so I did mention this on the announcements, but I know you've been very busy with your draft essays. But today is going to be more of a Q&A session than the last time when we really just covered one topic. So again, I want you to ask your questions. So if you have a question, you can fill it into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen if you're on Zoom. And if you're on YouTube, then you can just fill in any questions you have into the comments section, and Simon will read them for you when we get to the Q&A part of this presentation. And then when we get to that Q&A part of the presentation, if you don't want to type your question, if you want to say it out loud, then you can click the raise your hand button, and then Simon will be able to let me know that someone wants to say the question out loud, and then you'll be able to do that. So those are all your options for asking the questions. What I'm going to do now is go through some frequently asked questions so that you have some time to write your own questions, but maybe your question will be addressed in the frequently asked questions section of the lecture. So let's move ahead to the first frequently asked question, which is, when will you get your results for all the tests and assessments? So I just want to remind you here, there are approximately 1,400 ACL students. So it does take us a little bit of time to mark all of your assessments, especially the draft essay, because we want to give you a lot of comments so that you can improve that essay, and so that takes a little bit of time. So for test one, you'll see your marks have already been released on the ECI page, not on my Embry yet, but on the ECI page. And you can see those marks by clicking on test one or retest one, depending on which one you did, and then clicking review attempt. So that's where you'll see your marks. If you did both, don't worry, your higher mark will be counted, even if it seems like the ECI system is pulling a lower mark into that gradebook section of the ECI page. That is not where your final marks are recorded. Your final marks are recorded on my Embry. So we will record the higher mark to my Embry. And the same will go for test two. Test 2 marks will be released probably on Friday, the 5th of June. So it's going to take us about 2.5 weeks to get through all those test 2s, especially because so many people did both tests. So there's quite a lot. Then we have the draft essay. So that's going to be returned to you on the 12th of June. The final essay will be on the 10th of July, and test 3, the 4th of July. So I know a lot of you are quite concerned about having enough time to work on your draft essay, and I will speak to that in a few minutes, but just bear in mind that you will have enough time, and I'll explain exactly how that will work in a few moments.
Dana, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we've
Yes.
had a question from Halima, and it just seems appropriate to ask now.
Yes.
With regards to test 3, where can students get more information?
Okay, so you can look in your assessment guide, and in that assessment section of the ACL page, there's also a book on assessments that you can look at. But we're going to have 2 weeks of test prep, which will really make you feel like you can't stomach any more preparation for that test. So we'll chat about that in a few seconds.
Thanks, Dana.
Okay, so before we get to that, let's just have a look at the second frequently asked question, which is how you should approach finishing this module given all the confusion and change with the lockdown. So because there was some change and confusion and you had that extra long recess and now our semester has been extended, I've decided that for the rest of the semester, I'm going to send out instructions every Monday on what you should be doing that week. So if you are feeling a bit overwhelmed, you don't know how to approach your studies, just follow the instructions that come out on that week. And then you will know that you are completely up to date with the module. So all the announcements that I send out should go to your student email, but they're also all at the top of the page on the forum called announcements. So if you ever think, oh, I don't know what that announcement that was sent 2 weeks ago said, just go to the announcements section and you will see every announcement I've ever sent out, so you can always double check those announcements. If you have a question and you're in a WhatsApp group and you know everyone has the same question and you don't want to ask it yourself, you want someone else to ask it, you guys can always nominate reps to ask a question on behalf of the group. Remember, I don't know what's going on in your WhatsApp groups, and I am really happy to answer the questions that are coming up there, but someone needs to tell me. So remember to always make sure I'm somehow hearing about it, because otherwise the issue doesn't get resolved because I never hear that the issue exists. I also have a few people from a few of the buddy groups who are on a WhatsApp group, and they tell me what happens in their buddy groups. So if your buddy group doesn't have a rep for that buddy group and you want one, then the person who wants to be that rep can email me their WhatsApp number and you can be added onto that group as well. Otherwise, everyone is allowed to obviously ask their questions individually, especially questions about the content or due dates or anything to do with the module. And to ask your questions individually, all you have to do is send me an email. And I spend a lot of time on my email, so if you send an email during working hours on between a Monday and a Friday, you will get a reply really quickly. So it's a good way to make sure you get a response quickly. You can also use the messaging function on ECI, but it's always best to send an email because that messaging section is sometimes a little bit clumsy. But in general, just follow this schedule for the rest of the semester. Because if you follow the schedule, you will never be behind or have a major issue. So this doesn't mean that you must completely forget about all the work we did previously. You still need to remember the work from Unit 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6. But this is how you can treat the rest of the semester now that it's been extended. So we've already had 2 weeks of Unit 4. We're going to have another one next week. And then here is that time where we're going to prepare for the tests. So it's during that time that I will really make sure that everyone knows exactly what to expect from the tests. You'll get to do practice tests. So there'll be really a lot of preparation here for the tests. And then here is where we're going to work on those draft essays. So you're not going to have to do any other work for the module during these 2 weeks. You're just going to focus on the draft essays. I'm not going to give you any articles to read or any videos to watch that aren't related to improving your draft essays. So all the time you would have spent working on ACL101 is going to go to working on your draft essay. So you will have enough time. You'll have at least 2 weeks to really work on your essay and fix anything that needs to be fixed before you hand in your final essay on the 26th of June. The third frequently asked question is, what should you do if you've missed a deadline or an online test? So if you have a valid reason for missing a particular deadline or not being able to do an online test, then you must apply for an extension or for a retest. So you need to send those applications then to DL support. They are the ones that will help you apply for the extension or the retest, and they are the ones who will look at that application. So you need to be talking to them directly. The information on how to apply is on your ECI page, and the application is on your ECI page. Not your ACL ECI page, but the home page for ECI. But if you're struggling to find that, you can always send DL support an email and they will help you with that. And if you want to send me an email, I can send you the PDF with the instructions for the extension process. So there are lots of people willing to help you if you have a valid reason why you couldn't submit something. So do try and reach out for that support because we are willing to help you. but you need to reach out and apply for that support. Now, this is a question I have got many times, and I think it was particularly related to the draft essay, which I know you've already handed in, but I think it will come up again when you're submitting your final essay. So I want to talk about it a little bit, and that is the Turnitin similarity report. So as you will see in your assessment guide, the limit for first year submissions in terms of the similarity is 30%. But the system sometimes picks up things that aren't plagiarism as plagiarism. And a lot of students have emailed me because they're worried that their essays aren't going to be marked because the system picked up their whole reference list as plagiarism or the cover page as plagiarism, and then their plagiarism percentage went over 30%. So I just want to reassure you here that I'm not going to not mark your essay if I can see that the reason that your plagiarism percentage is high is because of silly things like your reference list or your cover page, and you're not going to get marked for those. Marked down for those things, because that's not plagiarism, and we wouldn't mark you down for something silly like that. We will only mark you down if there is plagiarism in the essay itself. So if the system is highlighting whole paragraphs or sentences, whole sentences in the essay itself, then there's a problem, and then you will get marked down. But if the system is highlighting your in-text references or your reference list, then you don't really have to worry, because we will see when we look at your report that it was just something silly that the system highlighted. Sometimes, though, you will get a high plagiarism percentage because you've relied on quotes. So you've quoted too much instead of paraphrasing. So remember, in a short essay, like the essay for ACL101, you shouldn't use a whole lot of quotes. You should only use 1 or 2 because it's such a short essay. And everything else should be paraphrased. So we're not going to mark you down if the system highlights a properly referenced quote as plagiarism, because we know that it's not plagiarism because you've put it in quotation marks. But if you've just used only quotes in your essay and you haven't really paraphrased or engaged in the work, then you would still get marked down, but not for plagiarism, but for content and your ability to engage with content. And the last FAQ I just want to talk about here is assignment 2, or the final essay. So I've already spoken about it a bit, about how you will have 2 weeks to work on that draft essay and make sure it's improved and that you respond to the comments that you got on that essay. But I just want to remind you here that you're handing in essentially the same essay. So it's going to look very different, I hope, because you're going to improve it so much and make it really amazing once you get all the comments on your draft essay. But you're not going to write me an entirely new essay on a new topic. You're going to look at the marks you got for the draft essay and look at the comments, then fix up any mistakes in that draft essay, and then hand it in again as the final essay or assignment 2. Okay, so that is all I wanted to say about the FAQs for the module. So now I'm going to have a quick look at any questions that have come up on the Zoom platform. Okay, so I've already elaborated. One of the questions I see is to please elaborate on test 3, but I have already elaborated on test 3, so I'm not going to do that right now. But if that is a persistent issue and you have a particular question about test 3, then you're welcome to type out your particular question and I'll answer it. So someone is asking if you have already submitted your draft essay before the due date, do you have to resubmit the draft essay? No. So your draft essay should have been handed in by now. The grace period ended at 11:59 last night. So everyone's draft essays should be in. You will then have that draft essay marked. You'll get a mark for the draft essay. That'll be your mark for assignment 1. And on the essay will be comments from your marker. Then you need to improve that essay, and then you hand it in again as the final essay. So it's not really just resubmitting the same thing over again. You need to have worked on it and improved it before you hand it in again as the final essay. Okay, so the next question says that there aren't many formulas in the referencing guide. Will there be a more detailed guide for referencing? Because many people struggle with referencing due to the limited resources. So perhaps you are finding the referencing guide difficult to work with, but you need to remember that there are actually a lot of videos about referencing. So if you watch all the videos on ECI, which cover all the different aspects of referencing as kind of an introduction to using that guide, then it should become a lot easier to work with that guide. So I recommend that if you're struggling with working with that referencing guide, you look at the live learning event that was done in February, because that live learning event focused entirely on referencing. Then you go watch all the videos for Unit 2, which there's some videos that focus on particular aspects of referencing. There's some videos that focus on particular sources and how to reference those sources. And then you go and do all the practice that I've put up for you. Because really with referencing, it's all about practicing. It's going to be difficult for a little while if you're not practicing it. But once you've done enough practice, it becomes second nature and it becomes easy. The reason there are not formulas for every single type of source in the referencing guide is because you need to look at the standard formula for each type of source. So the standard formula for books, for instance, and then everything that goes down in the table underneath for books is different exceptions to that formula, which are illustrated with an example, because it's actually a lot easier to understand referencing if you look at examples. So that's why the book is set up in that way. So there are a lot of resources on ECI, but if you are still having trouble once you've looked at all those ECI resources, then of course you're welcome to email me. We can even set up Zoom consults to talk about it. Okay. Just give me a second. It's a long question. I will paraphrase it for everyone. Okay, so this question is, how can you write an essay where you have to take a stance on the topic, but then also separate your personal feelings while you're writing that essay and not let your personal feelings seep into the essay when you're writing it? And that's a very good question. So the important thing to do with academic writing is to remember that you are allowed to have an opinion on matters, and a lot of academic writing is about taking a stance on an issue. But instead of just backing up that stance with your feelings or your opinions, you need to back up that stance with facts. And you get those facts by doing research. So that's the big difference. If you're having a normal conversation about your feelings, you don't really have to now refer to statistics or refer to studies or refer to other research that academics have done. You can just say whatever you want. You don't have to back it up. But in academic writing, you have to back up each and every single thing you say with evidence. So it's that evidence factor that makes a huge difference. The other thing you need to do is think about the style, because often the way you say something creates the impression that it's too personal or too based on your feelings, even if it isn't. So you need to look at Unit 1, because if you make sure that you use the third person instead of the first person, and you avoid saying things like, I think, I believe, I feel, then your essay, when someone reads it, creates an impression of objectivity, which is important for academic writing. So for that, you need to have a look at Unit 1 and Unit 5, because those will help you with that issue. Okay, someone is just asking me to repeat what you must do if you've missed a due date. You need to make sure that you send an email to DL support and you tell them that you have missed a deadline and you need to apply for a retest or an extension, whatever the case may be, and they will assist you with the application process to apply for a retest or an extension. Okay. Okay, so the next question is, if there are names in a sentence or common words in a sentence and then Turnitin picks up those common words or names as plagiarism, will you be penalized? So that, no. If I can see that what the system has picked up is the word the or the word power and nothing else in that sentence, then I'm not going to now penalize you because that's not plagiarism. We check that report really carefully. So we're not going to ever penalize you for something if it's not actually plagiarism. The second question this person is asking is whether you'll be penalized if your word count is inaccurate. So if you change something in your essay and you forgot to update your word count, you won't be penalized for that. We're not going to be super strict and mark you down for something like a word count. We're going to look at the content of your essay and mark you according to that rubric. So that rubric is what is important for how we mark your essay, and the rubric is in your assessment guide. Someone is asking what each color in the Turnitin report means. And the colors don't mean anything in particular. The colors are used to show what is from each source that the system is picking up. So you'll see it gives you a summary of sources that it thinks that you might have copied from, and then each of those sources corresponds to a particular color in the essay itself when it highlights. So the colors don't mean anything, it's just to show which sections are copied from which source according to the system. The next question is, what happens if you get below 50% for your draft essay? So I've heard this kind of question about the pass marks a few times. So remember, in higher education, the pass mark is 50%. For this module, it's a CAS module. So all you need to do to pass the module is to make sure that your final mark for the module as a whole is higher than 50% or 50%. So your final mark after you've done all the assessments is what is important. But remember, the assessments also have different weightings. So your test 1 and test 2 each count 10% towards your final mark. Your draft essay, again, counts 10% towards your final mark. So they count quite a small amount towards your final mark. But test 3 and your final essay count 35% of the final mark each. So they're weighted higher. So nothing is going to happen to you if you fail a particular assessment just because you failed that assessment. But if at the end of the day, your final mark is below 50 because your mark for that assessment was low, then of course there will be a problem and you may fail the module. So you need to be making sure that your mark overall is higher than 50%. The next question is, if you didn't submit a draft essay, will you be allowed to submit a final essay? And the answer to that is yes. So unfortunately, you will have missed out on getting a lot of feedback from a marker to help you with the draft essay, but you are still allowed to submit the final essay. The next question is about EBSCOhost. So it's someone saying that they are having a lot of difficulty logging on to EBSCOhost. So this is quite a big problem because you need to use EBSCOhost obviously to research for your essays, but also to access the various articles for Unit 4. So you need to make sure that you send DLL support an email as soon as possible telling them that you need help with your MyEmbry account, because you need to log into EBSCOhost via MyEmbry. There is a video on ECI, and it's called EBSCOhost Guide, and you can watch that video because that'll show you how to log on to EBSCOhost properly through MyEmbry. But if your problem is that you're struggling to get onto MyEmbry in the first place, then you need to send an urgent email to DL support because they are the ones who need to help you fix that. If you struggle though to find that video I just referred to, then you send me an email and I will send you the link for that video. The next question is, will I give you guidelines on how to improve your final essay? So for instance, will you get more information if a reference was done incorrectly? So to the first part of that question, yes, you will get a lot of guidelines on how to improve your final essay. You will see your marks for that essay, which is going to help you a lot to see which aspects of the rubric you are good at and which aspects you struggle with. You will get comments in the essay itself. There will be videos which talk about common errors and how to fix those errors. So we'll talk about all the common errors that came up when marking that essay. And you will be able to, of course, look at your mark for your final essay and then ask me for help about specific aspects of that draft essay. But it's obviously not possible with so many students for me to correct each and every reference, because then you will never get your draft essay marks back and it will take me years and years to do. So we won't be correcting each and every reference. We will point out when your referencing is done wrong, but it is then up to you to look at your referencing guide and all that information in Unit 2 to correct your reference if it was done wrong. Once you've looked at all the information in Unit 2 and if you're still not sure, then you send me an email with a specific question. The next question here is, when will you get feedback on your essays? I did mention that earlier. I'm just going to check my date because I have lots of dates in my head at the moment. You will get your feedback by the 12th of June for the draft essay. So you'll have at least 2 weeks to fix up that draft essay before you have to hand it in again. Let's have a look if there were other questions. Okay, there's another question saying, when will you get the results for test 2? The results for test 2 will come out by Friday the 5th of June. All right, so I think I've looked at all the questions on Zoom. Simon, are there any questions on YouTube?
No questions or comments as yet, Dana, but they do run a few seconds behind us in terms of the stream. So let's just give them a moment to catch up.
Okay. So if not, I will quickly then share my screen and just show them on the page where to find some of the resources that I've been referring to.
Yes, please do. No questions from YouTube at this point.
All right, so just give me 1 second to get to that page. Okay. All right, just see there's another question, which is, what is test 2 on? So you should have already written test 2. Those dates have passed. If you haven't written test 2 yet, you're going to have to apply to DL support for another retest. And test 2 is on Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 6. And all the information for all your assessments is on ECI, but I'm going to show you that now. And someone is asking about the result dates, so I'll just quickly show you those again. Okay, so these are the different dates where your results will be released. We'll try, obviously, to see if we can release it a bit earlier, but it does take us some time to do all the marking for such a big module. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the ECI page. Okay, so a lot of people were asking about the assessments and what are the assessments about and that sort of thing. So remember, all your assessment dates are here on this table, and the weighting for each assessment is on this table. So this is in the section of the ECI page called Assessments. And if you are at all confused about the assessments, you can look at this Moodle book, which explains the various assessments. So you look here on the right-hand side, and you can click and navigate to the assessment you're concerned about. So if you're concerned about test 3, then you will see test 3. Then this document is really important. It is your assessment guide, and it takes into account any changes that have been made because of COVID-19. But I can tell you that the changes made is that test 3 is no longer a written test. It is now also an online test. So you will write it online in the same way that you wrote test 1 and test 2 online. But if you are still not so sure about the assessments, or you want to hear me explain in detail the changes that came about as a result of COVID-19, you watch this video. And this video explains in detail all the different assessments. Then, if you are having any trouble with Unit 2, which is referencing, you can watch this video, which is a recording of the live learning event that I did in person before COVID-19. Then there was another learning event a few weeks ago. There's a recording here of that as well. Then for all of your units, you will see, well, not all, but most, you will see a book called Videos For, and then the name of that unit. You need to click that, and then all the support videos for that unit, so now we're looking at the support videos for Unit 2, are in that Moodle book. And so you're just going to click play, and then you can watch that video. And remember to always check the table of contents, because here there's another page of this little book which explains how to reference particular sources. So there's a lot of information for you on this Moodle page, or ECI page rather. So the same goes for Unit 4, for instance. Here are the videos for Unit 4. You can see there's all different sections, so you need to go through this table of content. And sometimes there will be more than one video per topic. So here, for instance, there's a video which goes through the theory, and then there's an example video. So if you're feeling that you don't really understand a section after going through it in your study guide, then the thing to do is look at these additional resources, because they will probably then answer the questions that you have that you feel you aren't so clear on after looking at your study guide. And then if you are wanting to have a look at your test marks, obviously test 2 is not yet available because we are busy marking it, but you look under this section called Online Test 1 and 2, and you will see you can click onto Online Test 1 and have a look at your results so that you know how you did in that test. Okay, I see there are a few more questions. So someone is saying, does DL support give you your login details for MyEmbry, or do you use the ECI login? So MyEmbry is a system you will have to set up like you had to set up your ECI login. So you should have got a link, and then you click that link and it allows you to reset your password and your login details for My Embry. So you need to look in your past emails. Maybe you did get that email, but you forgot about it, and then click on the link. But if you didn't get that email or you can't find it anywhere, then you're going to email DL support and say, please help me log into My Embry. Okay, the next question is, for the practice quizzes, will ECI mark those, or do you just check it yourselves with the review option? So if it's a multiple choice practice quiz, then ECI will mark it for you. But if it's something where I've asked you to give a written answer, then you will see that as soon as you've given your written answer, it will give you feedback. And in the feedback box, it'll show you exactly what the suggested answer for that question was. So what you're going to do is fill in the answer to the question in that practice quiz and then mark it yourself. But if you think that there's something wrong with the suggested answer, or you can't see why your answer is not right, or anything like that, then you're just going to send me an email and say, this was my answer, can you give me some feedback? And then I will give you feedback for that. So you're going to mark it yourself, but if you have questions for the practice quizzes, you're going to send me an email. So the practice quizzes, the reason we're not marking them is because firstly, we just don't have that kind of time, but also because they just aren't for marks. That doesn't mean they're not important. It is important to do them because it'll help you prepare for the assessments that are actually for marks. The next question is whether you're still going to have videos when COVID is over. So that is really at the discretion of the lecturer. So some modules lend themselves to having a lot of videos. So ACL is one where a lot of the things have to be explained out loud. So for ACL, we always have used videos. And for some of your other modules, your lecturers will do the same. But for some other modules, they might have a different way they like to go through the material. But you can rest assured that the lecturers will always give you the material in the best possible way and in a way that'll help you engage with it and learn it. The next question is, do you have an online participation mark for ACL? There is no participation mark, so you don't have to watch all the videos, you don't have to do the practice quizzes, but if you do watch the videos and do the practice quizzes, you're going to do much, much better in the assessments, which are for marks. Okay, so I think that is all the questions. Simon, I just want to check in again that there's nothing on YouTube.
No further questions or comments as yet, Dana.
Okay, see that we're almost at the end of our time. So if that's it, then I'll just share my screen again with those dates, because I think everyone was very interested in seeing when their results will be revealed to them. So I'll leave that on my screen for the last minute or two. But otherwise, if there aren't any questions, then I'm done with my side of the presentation. And thank you to everyone who did log on today and who asked questions. It's been nice to talk to you all live.